Alright, I feel the need to go over this because it seems like most of the community just is ignoring it, and that's the fact that it feels like Blizzard do not know how to patch this game. Yeah, I think most people agree the most recent patch is a step in the right direction. Ramontra's ultimate got nerfed. Do I like how it got nerfed? No, but I'll go into that later. Reinhardt got buffed. Do I like how Reinhardt got buffed? No, I'll go into that later. But all in all, heroes who needed buffs got buffs, and heroes who needed nerfs got nerfs. Except for Sojourn and Kiriko, big one. But characters got rebalanced in ways that made sense, for the most part. The problem is that it feels like these patches don't really have a purpose behind them, and they don't have any identity in what the patch is trying to accomplish. For example, let's look at one of the best changes this patch, Briggs buffs. Great change. It gives you a reason to multi-pack somebody. It makes packing a lot more dynamic how it used to be, as well as Rally. Good change. It makes it so that then she can pump out this low-value ultimate more often. It's good. I like that they're changing that. And they have some good, insightful developer comments on it. Repair pack, having a small amount of instant healing will help Brigitte have more agency in saving an injured ally and generally making the ability feel more responsive and impactful. Good call. I like it. Meanwhile, a change that I'm not a very big fan of is Junkrat. He got his concussion mine damage reduced from 120 to 100. In theory, this will make his combos harder, his one-shot combos, but in practice, he's still melting people. Because his problem wasn't it was somewhat his one-shot combo, but there's a much better fix to that, while keeping his character generally in line. And the fact that most explosives do 120 damage, it just makes sense as a good damage number in the context of the game. I think that the better decision would have been to just reduce his projectile size, because right now it's too easy for Junkrat to land shots at mid-range and even far range and even close range. It's just too easy right now, and the projectile is the biggest it's ever been at 0.25 meters. I'm pretty sure in Overwatch 1 it was 0.2 meters at the end of the game. They increased it. It should go back to 0.2 or maybe even 0.15. The hero is too easy to hit shots with right now, and this patch feels like they don't know what the real problem is coming from. Yes, the one-shots are an issue, but not as much as the fact that he can melt through tanks, he can land mid-range shots really easily if you're decent with it. It's the easiest the hero has ever been, and I think this is the wrong direction to take the character. And the hero who I think got hit the worst are Rom and Rhine. This is a very big nerf. I still think Vermont is probably going to be meta because block wasn't changed, and block was what, in my opinion, made the hero so strong. Not being able to use Rommel infinitely, but being able to survive in Rommel infinitely. If block had its damage reduction reduced from 75% to 60%, I think that would fix most of the problems. Instead of effectively having, 675 HP times 4? What is that? And with old Nemesis form, that was overtuned. It made him live too long. And now, with it only being 20 seconds, Nemesis is still too strong, in my opinion. Now, let's say Ramatra gained a 60% damage reduction. Instead of being, 4 times as tanky, instead of taking 25% damage, taking 40% damage. So 2.5 times. 2.5 times damage reduction, which puts you at effective 1688 HP. That still sounds really high, but Roadhog during Take a Breather effectively has 100 or 1400 with 700 heals over the course of a second. 1687 puts him in line with the other tanks compared to where he is now, where when he presses block on Nemesis form, which by the way, some of that is armor, 225 health and armor, which is a 35% damage reduction. So 225, if we're going to do his health correctly, it's 225 times 4 times 1.35 plus 450 times 4, 3015. He has an effective health over 3,000 while blocking. You have to deal 3,000 damage to him to kill him. which is absurdity. And I can't believe that didn't get nerfed. They nerf his ultimate duration and ult cost. I think that doesn't really solve any of the problems that make Ramattra so powerful right now, especially combined with Kiriko, where he can live forever because Kiriko has 130 health per burst. Sure, it's slightly harder now, but a good Ramattra player just will never die. The problem was never the duration, it was the survivability. And if they cut it back by 15% damage reduction, you're effectively cutting his health almost in half when blocking, which is a good change. It makes him in line with the other tanks, and it makes him vulnerable to damage. And the other one I really don't like is Reinhardt, because it's a personal thing, but Reinhardt in lore is so much built around protecting his teammates, protecting his friends, and that was the main point of that cinematic. I will be your shield, not I will be your hammer. And he currently plays like your hammer and not your shield. So what I would have liked to see is a small buff to his shield HP. Only about 150 to 200 HP. Not a lot, but it would make him a little bit more survivable. Give him that effective HP that he kind of needs right now in order to do his job. And to help his teammates pass through chokes a little bit easier, because right now he can't really do that. 1200 to 1350 or 1400 doesn't sound like that big of a buff, but it really can help in a lot of situations. I mean, his current shield feels like tissue paper, and it's only a 400 health decrease, so 200 health back up, I think would be warranted. Instead, what they opted to do is Hammer has less knockback. I don't like that change. It makes it less skillful to play as and against Reinhardt, because canceling pin into a swing to knock somebody off the cliff is not as viable an option anymore. That makes it less skillful to play against Reinhardt because it's harder to hammer surf. And it's just not very fun to me. I don't like it in the way that they changed it. It just doesn't seem like a very fun change. Charge cooldown 8 seconds, 7 seconds, fine. That's good. I like it. It's not bad. Shatter direct hit damage reduced from 250 to 170. Great change. I don't like being one-shot by Hammer, and I don't like being a Junker Queen whose health is below half because Reinhardt pressed Q and I was standing a little too close. The knockdown duration increased by 0.25 seconds. I would have just said increase it back to 3 seconds, what it used to be. I don't think that would be too strong, and I think that it would be a worthwhile buff for that damage nerf, as well as the fact that its ult cost is higher, 7%. It would put it at 1650, which is pretty low, all things considered. The one I really don't like is Fire Strike's damage being upped from 90 to 100. Now you're going to have so many situations where you're going to have somebody complaining because they did not get healed between 2 Fire Strikes. Reinhardts are going to be able to just Fire Strike through a window twice and one-shot people. They're going to be able to just plainly Fire Strike twice into a crowd and get even more ult charge and get even more damage and probably get even more picks on supports who don't have support on them. And any chip damage will make that even easier. It's just not a good change. I think that it's going to be really annoying to play against. And I think the community is going to turn on Reinhardt. Now, I think what they did to Roadhog is good. They absolutely butchered the character in a previous patch. I think that that's a good change. I think that's warranted where it's at. And this patch, they gave him a buff that I think is really important for how he's playing right now. They increased the duration of Whole Hog, which is good because a lot of the time you see Roadhog players only get about 3 or 4 seconds of value out of a Whole Hog because they're hooking and they're breathing. And that cuts out a lot of time in a Whole Hog that didn't used to be taken up. So now you're going to have Roadhog players actually getting more use out of a Whole Hog. It's good to see. I like this change. And I liked his last change for the most part. Increased distance with a hook is what I said they should do. That's a good decision. He does less damage. It's a good decision. I do wish that they gave him some defensive utility, like that experimental patch he had a while back. I think something like that would be neat. But yeah, I think Roadhog got it good. But outside of that, my main point is that it doesn't feel like there's much of a purpose in these patch notes. A lot of these don't even have descriptions on them. Like, why did you make Zarya's ult cost 8% more? Yeah. But yeah, overall, I don't see the reason for a lot of these patches. They don't feel like solutions to problems. They feel more like they're just trying to make the characters better and they don't have a good idea to, so they're just throwing things at the wall. A good example of a good patch is Valorant. Valorant's most recent patch, 6.02. They did a couple of ping things, which look fine. I don't play much Valorant, but it looks good. But most importantly, they nerfed the Stinger. The Stinger was kind of over-centralizing in the meta right now, and you could force buy it a lot of the time and get a ton of value. Its cost was increased by 150 credits. Its damage fall-off now starts 5 meters closer, and it does 2 less damage. I think those are great changes for the weapon because it was very over-centralizing in a lot of rounds, and it did too much. And they have a very detailed description. It's 4 lines. We feel the Stinger is overperforming at medium to long ranges. At its price point, force buying heavy armor and Stingers both round 2 and 3 was too effective and lacked the appropriate nuance and economic trade-offs. I think this patch does that pretty well. It's more expensive, but it's still possible. It does less damage, but it doesn't butcher the weapon. It is less effective without being ineffective. They nerfed it in a very healthy way, and they explained it very thoroughly and very understandably. The Overwatch patch notes, it took me like 5 minutes to read everything. I want to know what they're doing more, and I want to see where they're coming from, but I kind of just don't. They do a good job with a few heroes, like Reinhardt. He does get a very described reasoning for his patch, but outside of that, most characters are just kind of, the ult lasted too long, so we're making it last less. Oh, the ult didn't last long enough, so we're making it last longer. Not really explaining their mindset behind it as much as they should, compared to, again, Valorant, that perfect example of the Stinger. The Stinger was too effective at long range for how cheap it was, and players just bought it on round 2 and 3 and forced it. Quick, concise, understandable. And I wish they did better things. Like, if you need to nerf Winston, reduce the damage that his right click does. His right click does a lot of damage right now for what he's trying to do. Make it, instead of 25 to 50, 20 to 40. It's a very small change, but I think it would impact him in the place it needs, not his bubble HP. His bubble HP is what makes him a unique character. Don't nerf that. Ball, the arm time for Minefield is reduced. That sounds annoying. Pile Driver is going to come up more often. Going to make his gameplay potentially more fluid. Sounds okay. His health was adjusted to make him a little bit more survivable. I think that's a good change, but none of these really fix his problem, where he's not very good of a team player. Like, he needs more ways to combo into his teammates. For example, maybe Pile Driver, you can't leave Pile Driver for a little bit longer, but it pops people up for longer and it prevents them from moving as much. I think that would be a good change to make him more of a team player and less of a, I'm just going to roll around their backline and live forever. These patches don't feel like they're solving any problems, except for a few. I think Cass's changes are really fun to play with. It makes him feel a little bit more impactful on a casual standpoint. It's very fun. Sombra, I think this change was great for her. It perfectly addresses the problems that I have with her, where hack feels necessary, but now you do a little bit more damage, and hacked health packs last longer, so there's a reason to hack them now. Widowmaker got her HP reduced. I think that's good. It'll make her less dominant in a lot of games. And I don't want to talk about Mercy because I don't like Mercy's changes.